Ray Edward Cochran entered the world on October 3, 1938, in Albert Lea, Minnesota. The youngest of 3 children born to Frank and Alice Cochran, he grew up in a working-class household shaped by the slow rhythms of the Midwest and the steady hands of Depression-era values. His father, a machinist, had relocated the family several times in pursuit of reliable work, finally settling in Bell Gardens, California, when Eddie was in his early teens. Life in Southern California offered something his birthplace could not: a burgeoning, electrified music scene and proximity to Hollywood. Eddie quickly found himself drawn to rhythm-driven tunes that mixed country twang with the pulsing energy of R&B. While his peers chased the laid-back trends of surf and crooners, Eddie picked up a guitar and began tracing chords he heard from jukeboxes and radio towers. His voice matured quickly. By 15, he possessed the look, the sound, and the drive of someone twice his age. His earliest musical obsession was country, but it wouldn't take long for rhythm and blues to seep into his playing. He blended the swing of Hank Williams with the bite of Muddy Waters and wrapped it all in a voice that growled with teenage frustration. Eddie had a gift for absorbing ideas. He would listen to a song once and decode its structure, adapting it instantly. His bedroom transformed into a rehearsal space. Old amps hummed through the night. His mother would find him asleep, with a Gretsch in his arms, still plugged in. In high school, he formed a duo with Hank Cochran, no relation, and the two toured briefly under the name the Cochran Brothers. Although their material leaned toward hillbilly harmonies, Eddie's heart belonged elsewhere. The country format boxed him in. He wanted distortion. He wanted to break away from formality and inject chaos into song structure. His solo journey began to take shape in 1955 when he was introduced to songwriter Jerry Capehart. Capehart became more than a collaborator. He was a guide, a lyricist who understood Eddie's raw instincts. Together, they built a sound that married swagger with structure, rebellion with control. In 1956, Skinny Jim became Eddie's first release. Though the single didn't chart, it caused a stir among local musicians and producers. The industry saw something new: a teenager capable of leading a band, producing his own material, and carrying an image that oozed cinematic charisma. Eddie's real breakthrough came with Sittin' in the Balcony in 1957. A smooth rocker that climbed to number 18 on the Billboard chart, the song marked his arrival as a serious contender in the exploding youth market. It was clean enough for radio, but his guitar playing hinted at the unruliness beneath. While others wore suits, he sported leather. Where crooners sang sweetly, Eddie let the rhythm punch through with grit. Soon after, the hits began to arrive. 20 Flight Rock wasn't just catchy, it was a masterclass in energy. The track became a rite of passage for aspiring rockers. Its frenetic pace, simple chord progression, and relentless vocal pattern became an audition piece for young musicians. Paul McCartney famously impressed John Lennon with his flawless recitation of the song, leading to the birth of the Beatles. Cochran's voice on record was magnetic, controlled yet feral, filled with the frustrations of young men tired of authority, rules, and routine. He sang as though the mic was his confessional, a place to vent, to spark change. Summertime Blues, released in 1958, brought everything into focus, with its stop-start rhythm, cheeky dialogue with an imagined boss and congressman, and pounding backbeat. The track resonated with kids desperate to speak up. It reached number 8 in the U.S. and became one of the defining anthems of the era. His guitar work also evolved. He pioneered the use of overdubbing, recording multiple instrumental tracks himself. He didn't need a wall of musicians. He built the wall on his own. His hands knew how to coax every emotion from 6 strings. While Eddie's music carried the weight of teenage rebellion, off stage he was thoughtful and often surprisingly quiet. Friends described him as witty, deeply loyal, and meticulous in everything from clothing to chord selection. He carried notebooks of lyric ideas and spent hours tinkering with arrangements. Romantically, he became involved with songwriter Sharon Sheeley, who would go on to pen several hits. Their connection was genuine, built on more than music. Though young, they spoke of futures and shared a sense of destiny. Sheely described him as fiercely protective, prone to bouts of worry about fame, mortality, and whether he'd leave a mark. He also remained close with his family, sending money home and calling frequently from the road. His mother worried about the travel, the late nights, the pace. Eddie reassured her, but in private, he admitted the pressure was mounting. Tour schedules grew more intense. Studio sessions bled into road trips, which turned into appearances, radio spots, and back again. He was exhausted, but he never pulled back. There was always one more song to write, one more show to finish. By 1960, America's obsession with new trends meant rockabilly had begun to slip from its pedestal. But across the Atlantic, Eddie Cochran was a sensation. British teens had devoured his records. He toured the UK alongside Gene Vincent and received roaring receptions at every stop. The British tour in early 1960 was supposed to last a few weeks, but the demand kept rising. He played sold-out shows, recorded TV appearances, and inspired a generation of British musicians. Young men in Liverpool, London, and Manchester began to mimic his hairstyle, guitar stance, and vocal swagger. He was introduced to the English countryside, small-town streets, and damp hotels. He found the weather cold, but the fans warm. During this tour, he re-recorded several tracks, including 3 Steps to Heaven, which would take on a new meaning after what happened next. April 16, 1960, began like any other night on the road. Tired laughs backstage, the chill of English spring creeping into thin jackets, instruments packed, applause still echoing in memory. Eddie Cochran, Sharon Sheely, and Gene Vincent climbed into a taxi after their show at the Bristol Hippodrome, bound for London. The driver, George Martin, pushed the car faster than the winding country road warranted. They were eager to return, perhaps even impatient to leave the cold behind. But fate, with cruel timing, had other plans. As the car approached Roden Hill near Chippenham, something went horribly wrong. Whether it was slick tarmac, fatigue, or mechanical failure, the vehicle veered and slammed into a concrete lamppost. The impact crumpled metal like paper. Glass exploded into the night. The twisted shell of the car came to rest in a silence broken only by groans and sirens in the distance. Gene Vincent cried out, his injured leg pinned, bones shattered again. Sharon Sheely drifted in and out of consciousness, her pelvis fractured. But Eddie, thrown from the car, lay motionless on the side of the road, head bleeding, skin gray in the moonlight. His guitar, which had been in the boot, was found broken not far from him, splintered as though echoing its owner's condition. He was rushed to St. Martin's Hospital in Bath, unconscious and slipping further by the minute. Nurses worked feverishly. The doctors knew the truth even as they tried. The head injury was too severe. Swelling, pressure, internal bleeding. Every second stole more of him. As dawn broke on April 17, 1960, Eddie Cochran took his last breath. The hospital room was quiet, sterile, painfully still. The boy who had electrified a generation was gone before most of the world knew what had happened. He was 21 years old. The news traveled with shocking speed. By mid-morning, American radio was breaking regular programming with the update. British fans sobbed in the street. Young musicians who had studied his records in their bedrooms dropped their guitars in disbelief. In coffee bars and clubs, silence reigned. He had crossed an ocean to share his sound, and in a cruel twist, he would never return. In the wake of his death, Eddie Cochran's music gained new urgency. 3 Steps to Heaven reached #1 in the UK posthumously. It played like a farewell, filled with haunting hope. He had recorded fewer than 30 original songs as a solo artist, yet those tracks would inspire wave after wave of musicians, from the Beatles and the Rolling Stones to Led Zeppelin and The Clash. Guitarists praised his economy and phrasing. Singers admired his control. But Eddie was more than influence. He was the first American rocker to bring production autonomy into the mainstream. He experimented, he arranged, he shaped his sound with a vision that stretched beyond trends. Each anniversary of his death is still marked in Chippenham. Locals maintain a memorial on Roden Hill. His records continue to be reissued, and his voice remains a fixture on rock radio. Eddie Cochran didn't burn out. He was taken mid-burst. His story doesn't read like a long novel, but like a collection of poems, fierce, brief, unforgettable. His legacy isn't measured by longevity, but by intensity. He left behind no controversies, no public breakdowns, no diluted comebacks. What he left was youth, bottled in vinyl, raw, loud, melodic, aching for freedom. And somewhere in the air, just above the static of an old jukebox, his guitar still cries out, lean, rough-edged, alive.